Well, thank you for staying with us. As a temporary response to the nation's growing food crisis and the rising price of commodities, President Bola Tinubu this week ordered the immediate release of more than 102 metric tons of various grains types from the Strategic Reserve and the Rice Millers Association of Nigeria. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, revealed this to State House correspondents after final leg of the 3 meetings of the Special Presidential Committee on Emergency Food Intervention at the Aso Rock Villa. Deliberations began after angry youths and women took to the streets of Minna, the Niger State capital, and Kano to protest what they described as the rising cost of living in the country. Similar protests also erupted in Ondo State. I have joining me to discuss this Ayodele Adio, and policy analyst, and Olufemi Lawson, Executive Director, Center for Public Accountability, via Zoom. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. I just want to begin like this. Emergency situations require emergency measures. That was the exact words of the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Sir Mohammed Idris. But let me begin with you, Ayodele. What are the expected outcomes and impacts of the food intervention on the food security, nutrition, and as well-being of Nigerians?
I'm not sure I heard the last part of your question correctly, but if I heard you correctly, I think that the facts speak for itself. According to the FAO, at least 4 million Nigerians are on the brink of starvation in Nigeria. There's a lot of hunger across the entire country because food inflation has hit over 30%. Especially in cities like Lagos, that has 38%. People's purchasing powers have so dwindled that they really cannot afford to feed themselves 3 times a day. And this is because they always have to do trade-offs, with the monies that they have with them, because as inflation continues to soar, wages have remained on the floor. And so primarily, many people have argued that even though the several fundamentals cannot move at the same time, it is important for the government to at least make food and transportation at least affordable, because every data points to the fact that the average household spends at least 60% of household expenditure on food and transportation. So if you solve that, or at least bring them down, you can relieve the pressure on so many households across the country. Now, unfortunately, I don't think that I have seen enough, and this is not just about the federal government, because the states and the local governments across the country have also been receiving higher revenues since petrol subsidy has been moved. But there doesn't seem to be a grand plan to deal with the cost of food. And the answer to that question is very simple. You cannot improve the cost of food if farmers cannot go to their farms to farm. That means there has to be security for farmers to go to their farmlands to farm across the country. Of course, you cannot increase or lower the cost of food if you don't increase productivity. That means we must invest more in mechanized farming, in large-scale mechanized farming, and improve yield across the country so that we can, blow harvests. And of course, provide storage facilities, so that we can reduce the volatility in the prices of food all year round. Now, these are the things that we need to start seeing happen for us to have confidence that the prices of food will come down. Because you're not going to command these prices to come down. You don't even have enough in your grain. When I heard about the grain reserves, you don't have enough in your reserves. That's the reality, the fact that if you remove, no matter how much you have stored in your grain reserve, in another 1 month, we are back to square one, right? So we must fix the fundamentals as to why food prices are going up. And if we don't do that fast enough, we risk what happened in Niger, where women came out to protest because of hunger spreading across the country. And you don't want to see that kind of thing happening in Nigeria today.
All right, Olufemi Lawson, let me bring you into this conversation. I don't know how you react to this food intervention that many people believe is timely. And how will the government ensure that the food items are not diverted, hoarded, or sold out at exorbitant prices by unscrupulous elements? And I'm sure you heard the news of how some lawmakers, the governors, have refused to share the grains. I don't know how you want to react to this.
Well, for me, thank you, Jacinta. For me, irrespective of what is available at this point as strategic reserves, unfortunately, even the rice millers are going to be providing more than the entire country could provide. That is 60,000 to about 40,000 in the national reserve of the country. I think these are very temporary measures, and I want to strongly believe that for the time that this may, palliate the situation, the federal government must immediately work with other stakeholders, including the state government, the Farmers Association, the Manufacturers Association, and the private sector to look into the fundamental ways of addressing this issue. Recently, I was privileged to be part of a tour that took us from Lagos through the South to some part of Benue State, through some part of Northwest State, back to Abuja, through Kogi back to Lagos, by an organization supporting farmers. And it will amaze you, and it is frightening to me that I speak to you tonight, not less than 4,225 farm settlements are already shut down across the roads. I'm not talking about the entire country. I'm talking about, and when I talk about farm settlement, I'm not talking about 4,200 and something farmers. I'm talking about settlements, some that have 100 farmers, 150 farmers, some are communities, have already been shut down due to the activities of bandits and insurgents. Whatever is happening today is not just because the government is totally clueless or incompetent. There are other factors that are dealing with us today as a society. So even if the federal government, as directed by Mr. President, is releasing about 102, tons of grains and whatever you want to call it, this may only be as temporary as the next couple of days. In any country, no matter your population, where it is estimated that 1 million people, 1 million, not even 2 million, 3 million, 4 million like we have in our own situation, can go to bed tonight with having not eaten today, extreme hunger, that country must be seriously concerned because it may lead to those unforeseen circumstances. So while it is commendable that Mr. President has given this directive, while it is commendable that this will palliate the situation a little bit, we must begin to address the fundamental issues that is affecting food production. Because why? Of course, there are foods in the market. There is yam in the market, tomato in my truck. Every market you go, you find rice. But the truth is that there's limitation to this availability. And when there are limited supply, tendency that prices will go up, becomes automatic. Why are we having this increment in the price of our food products? It is because there's a limited supply, and the purchasing power of our people is becoming reduced almost on a hourly basis. Today, if you buy, a sachet of food for one price today, it's tendency that when you get there tomorrow morning, the price may have changed. Because now, most of the food prices that are experiencing inflation are products that are not locally produced by Nigeria. Our farmers are no longer safe to go to the farms. We can no longer eat the yams, the beans, the local food produced. Now we have to rely on imported rice, noodles, and whatever pasta, whatever you call it, whose prices are skyrocketing in an abnormal manner. So I think beyond this very temporary measure, the federal government must look at how we will address the fundamental cause of this food scarcity, food shortage that Nigeria is experiencing.
All right, Mr. Olufemi.
One of which is very terrible.
All right, I know you have a whole lot to talk about. I was going to even ask that you evaluate the performance of the president and his administration in addressing this economy and social issues in Nigeria. But then we know that we won't keep blaming the the government, the people also share in this blame. And I believe it's out of wickedness that people get to take advantage of the already worsened situation to enrich their pocket. And I want to believe that it has to stop. And the president saying that he's to sanction anybody found culpable of hoarding or diverting this food intervention.